Hello and welcome back to the Career Compass. Today we're going to be exploring how forward-looking leaders can reimagine organizational design, strategy, and value creation in an AI native economy, and also how to position themselves and their businesses credibly when the market is still gripped by fear and uncertainty. I'm delighted to be joined by Mark Strefford, founder of Timelapse AI, creator of Constellation Project.ai, and also founder of Reimagined OS. Mark, it's great to see you. Thanks for coming
Thank you.
on.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you on. Perhaps you can kick us off with a brief introduction to yourself, how you got started and what's kind of driven you to where you are today.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, it's good to be on. So thanks for the introduction and the invitation. I got into technology when I was 11. I remember saving up all year to buy what was a very underpowered by today's terms computer, and it really captured me. I got into programming quite early on, and there was some program. I think it was on Tomorrow's World, which might be showing my age, I guess, about robots in Japan and how they learn to like communicate and the very basics of what we call AI today, right? So they captured me. I tried to build some natural language processing stuff in a few K in memory, which I was early. I was young. There was no Google, right? There was no
No,
Udacity or
pre-Google.
Coursera. There was like the library didn't even cover some of this. So it was a short-lived project, but it kind of fascinated. I was fascinated by. I moved into writing games, and then over time, I ended up in consulting and I worked on a lot of large scale digital transformation programs, which really baked in this whole idea of technology was there for the business and for, in my view, right, if it doesn't serve the customer, it's kind of a waste of time doing it. We all have our little projects to learn stuff, but really it's about the customer first. It's about how do we add value to the world around us. And technology is just this massive enabler for that. 2014, ended up working with a guy who was ex-Google, who was big into data. We were looking at building marketing stacks and how we could fairly rank hotels in an online travel agency better than a business manager could, and really start to see what data could and couldn't do.
Mm.
Started me down an AI journey. I tried to build a robot to chase me kids around the garden. They were young. Sounded like this nice little I'll do it in 3 weeks project. Realised at that point how hard computer vision really is.
Yeah, it's a
you
different
know,
ball game, isn't it?
yeah. There's Tom or whatever. There's Zach, and then the minute they turn around, it just says there's nobody there, and I'm like, hang on a minute, there is people there. So, it really, at that point, I really realised the power of training data and what's in it and what isn't. But
Absolutely.
the last 8 to 10 years, heavily involved in AI, even before the latest big, buzz around generative AI. And I think,
Mm.
personally, I think it's a fantastic, an amazing, fantastic time to be alive.
It is. Absolutely. I mean, the capabilities that are on offer now and, the sheer kind of range of some of the projects that we hear about. And, to
Yeah,
your point, we'll get to talk about some of the things you're doing as well. But so there's a wonderful kind of sense of possibility alongside obviously fear and
yeah,
trepidation and disruption. But I think they can't really exist one without the other. They have to be kind of there alongside each other. I know that you've talked a lot about building conviction from vision, not validation from precedent, which is a really interesting statement. So what does that mean for leaders right now, especially when everyone's kind of waiting for proof before acting?
I think that's exactly it. I think, yeah, I'm not a psychologist, but I've read quite a bit, and there's human nature is we look for comfort in what other people have done. We look for confidence. They're doing it. It must be okay. We get many of us are probably taught that way as kids. Don't stand out because you get
Yeah,
the crowd
blend
doesn't
in,
like that,
be
right?
normal.
So we kind
Mm,
of carry this probably in many cases unconsciously into later life, and many businesses become, what's our competitors doing? We need to be, competitive with our competitors. And it becomes this like ethos. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, because going out on your own and forging a new market is incredibly hard. But, we're at a point in time now where, in my opinion, imagination is kind of the limit, right?
mm.
Whether how much you buy into vibe coding or anything else is debatable, and it works in some scenarios for some people and not in others, right? But like, if you just wait for people to just, another company to do it, you're missing out on a huge opportunity to take, a leap of faith even. And, I don't mean betting the house, right? I don't mean betting the farm on this. It's let's just try some things that other people really haven't and learn
Just
from it and
experiment.
iterate. And,
Yeah.
I think it's perfect opportunity just to start expanding what we as humans in mentally think we can do, psychologically, where we play out, and
Mm.
just really building a world that many of us have probably only imagined, right?
Well, I
So
think so. And I was speaking to someone in the States yesterday afternoon about the kind of outer parameters of what we understand is we're capable of today, or what's possible in terms of the technology. And, after this great kind of disruption has started to settle down, and people have got a little bit more clarity on the lay of the land, there are probably jobs that don't exist right now that will exist. They'll be created, and new possibilities will open up. So it's going back to what you said, it's a fascinating time to be alive. And I think, the best way to kind of predict the future is almost to create it, to
yeah,
experiment and iterate. This is what
yeah,
you're doing, to a
yeah.
large degree. So
Yeah,
I,
I look back and you look at we were all farming the fields and growing our own food, and the Industrial Revolution. I know I'm oversimplifying. Came along, and then there was all these jobs created in factories, and then the internet comes along, and all of a sudden there's all these internet jobs. Yeah, you could debate it either way with AI. Either AI will take all jobs and there will be no others, or actually there will be this whole set of things that as humans we want to create, experience, do that AI is just never going to give us. So what does that look like, right?
well, the car was meant to obliterate the horse, and the internet was meant to destroy the high street. Horses, thankfully, are
Yeah,
still here, and they give a great deal of pleasure to a lot of people. High
yeah,
streets still exist. People still want to go and sit in cafes and touch things and feel things and smell things, right? So I think there is this period of adaptation, if that's the right word, that
yeah.
people are just going to have to figure. We've got no choice in the end. We have to kind of go through it and learn as we go. Um, but and one thing that you mentioned before, you've been working in AI obviously since before it was fashionable. Talking about Tomorrow's World, and I'm going to show my age as well. I do remember that show.
Yeah,
Talking about these space age things, which
yeah.
which seemed out of kind of possibility. So what's kind of changed since those days, and what still hasn't effectively? Is it the case that we've just put a different label on it? We've put a shiny AI badge on things that have been there for a long time.
Yeah. So I, I think one of the things people don't recognize or realize probably is that a lot of the underpinnings of today's generative AI, was it came out in the 50s and 60s, and I get it was much more simple. We've learned a huge amount. The algorithms are more advanced, and that rate of change is that pace of change is it's going exponential.
Yeah.
But this technology has been around for a long time. And what's really changed? When I got into this in 2017, commercially really, we were building algorithms. We used to have this saying, if it's on PowerPoint, it's AI, and if it's it's in code, it's machine learning. Everyone was
Yeah.
jumping on the AI bandwagon because AI back then for sure had this connotations of AGI, right? So everything got badged AI, and then now we need to be more specific. It's artificial general intelligence that we're aiming for.
That's right.
But yeah, so but that was very much around prediction, building
Mm.
predictive maintenance algorithms. Can you tell if this part will fail before it does? Because if you can, you can get the engineer and the replacement part there, or fix it before you have an outage of your production line or your system or whatever it might be.
Mm. Mm.
Can you predict what action this person might take?
So it's running scenarios, modeling
Yeah,
probabilities.
yeah, exactly. These people are in a cohort. They might want to act in a certain way. These are in a different cohort. They might want to, whatever that is that you're trying to predict.
Mm.
Generative AI, which actually has been around since 2018. Well, the paper came out in 2018, so 7 years ago, right? The hype is just getting started. Well, it's been going for a year or two, maybe. Now it gives us the ability to create, to generate stuff, whether that's images, in a better way than we could before.
Yeah.
Text, natural language processing was like the poor cousin to computer vision 10 years ago. Now, generative AI is really step like the text generation into a new into the stratosphere probably. But I still think companies struggle with one big thing. Now, a lot of companies do, and that is that AI is not what I'd call deterministic, or what's called deterministic. So you give it the same scenario every time, and it's going to give you slightly different answers. It's stochastic,
Variations on it.
variable element of randomness in it. And that, certainly in the generative AI world, has significant connotations, right? If you get into, let's say, create a LinkedIn post, a picture to put on your backdrop because you want a nice sunset or whatever, right? That's okay. But if you're in certain sectors, as regulated sectors specifically, or legal, medical, whatever that might be, it has the surrounding stuff needs to be much more. You put more rigor around it.
Yeah, it needs more context, and it's particularly in regulated environments, isn't it? You've got to be a bit more careful. Yeah.
Yeah. There is also a lot of AI fatigue, right? People talk about it. I go on LinkedIn and there's just, I kind of describe it, again, showing our age, right? Used to go to the market and they'd be like, £1 for potatoes. It is just like that with AI posts. And it's literally, I could put one into ChatGPT or other LLMs are available, right? And just say, give me 1,000 versions of this post and just post them under random people all day, every day. And that's LinkedIn for me. And I think that's hype.
Where's the value add?
Grounded,
isn't it?
Surface level. Yeah, there's no, and of course AI is as great as it is in some situations, is really causing issues in others. It's so hard now to be seen in any subject, really, because anyone with ChatGPT can just pump the market full of fake stuff, right? Stuff that's low value, just noise, slop, and
flooded with bots.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, and I know the other component to this, and we both talked about this, is there's a lot of fear in the market right now, as well as opportunity. So, I mean, in every difficulty there is opportunity, you can argue. So how do you see this playing out for execs and technologists right now, notwithstanding the fact that it's hard to break through the noise?
Yeah.
Where do you see the kind of big opportunities, and how do you see it playing out in the next 6-12 months?
Yeah, so there's a number of ways of approaching AI. First one is to ignore it and hope it all goes away.
Which, head in the sand.
Yeah, exactly. The second route is to buy into all the hype and just go headlong and bet the farm, and again hope it all works out. and then
crossed.
Yeah, in the middle, I think there's two approaches to take. So one is the more cautious, and that's to look at where there's bottlenecks in your business, issues, a lot of manual processing that you can automate, or at least automate a big part of it, and that's where a lot of companies go. It's the safer option because it's a known environment. If you do it right, you can understand your return on investment. It's going to cost X for the solution. There's a people cost and there's a training cost, and maybe there's an efficiency cost, right? So you can balance the equation reasonably well. That's where I see a lot of organizations go. It comes with some downsides. You're just going to automate something that probably has been automated quite heavily, or optimized, let's say, quite heavily over the last 10, 15, 20 years, because that's Lean Six Sigma, all these, right? Let's optimize it, whether we mean it or not. Yeah. Organizations have been optimized, so the return on investment might not be as big as it could be, but at least it's safe and it's a good place to start and to learn and grow from, right? Absolutely. If you're new to this world, start there. Might be mindful though of upstream and downstream effects. If this team puts out 10 a day and AI can put out 100, where do those 10 and now 100 go? Can they cope with that? Yeah. The example is if you've got a maintenance algorithm, a team that looks for maintenance faults and they pick up 10 a day, and you've got a downstream team that fixes them, and they're used to they're geared up for 10 a day, right? The parts are there, the people are there, and then you give them 100 a day, they're just going to be like, whoa, what's this, right? Their SLAs will fail. So it's just thinking through that implications in the rest of the organization, or in your partner organization's ecosystem, whatever that might be, or for your customers. The other way where I tend to work with my clients is, what does this look like if we started from first principles? Very basically, you've got an input and you've got an output, right? What does that bit in the middle really need to look like? Challenging even both ends at times. And if you start from that place, I'm not saying always, but sometimes things come up that, oh, hang on a minute, yes, we could do it that way. Yeah,
it could even do it.
Yeah, better way of doing it, which leads itself more natively to what AI can bring, or even just like actually, if we did it this way, we don't even need AI, but we give our customers a far better experience.
Yeah.
Is equally a good answer. Yeah, AI can then optimize bits of it, but it's much more purposeful and forward thinking, and in some ways can remove a lot of the inefficiencies that I do see. I think, just clarifying that point, efficiencies are very much siloed in many places, and what I
Yeah.
look at is how do you do that?
Mm. Yeah, and I've been doing a little bit of work recently with someone who's trying to kind of almost take it back to the old-fashioned flow chart and say, tell me step by step exactly how this all runs. You know,
Yeah,
what takes the most time? What rabbit holes do you end up going down? And if you know the Socrates question, if you get all that time back, what would you do with it? It would be fantastic, wouldn't it? You know, so it's almost thinking in the classical music terms I often do. It's kind of orchestrating all of the different parts, isn't it? It's connecting them. They're doing the heavy lifting, all that great stuff. So I get the sense that there's a lot of people out there that are kind of simultaneously fascinated by AI, but they're also skeptical of it. And no one wants to be the first one to commit, do they? No one wants to be the guinea pig. So if you had someone come into you with that frame of mind, what advice would you give to them?
I think first of all, there's some people. I don't think you can change people's beliefs. Really, I think they have to want to change it themselves. Yes, the skeptical nature. You know, AI has been described as a mirror, and I think that's a good analogy. And by that, what do I mean? If you think it's going to be really empower you, your business, your life, whatever
You
that
buy
might be,
into it.
yeah, and you buy into it, it has a knack, right? Should we say, of being able to live up to that expectation to a point, right? I'm not saying it's perfect and it's some panacea of solving everyone's problems, because I think the more you look at it from that way and you learn to use it and get value from it, then it does have, it can be, it can provide a lot of value. I'm not saying it replaces humans, and that's one of the things around fear probably we should touch on in a moment. Um, Sorry, what was the question? I just realised.
So it's people that come to you and say, I am fascinated by the possibilities, but I'm also a bit skeptical. There's a handbrake that's
Yeah.
halfway up, you could say.
Okay. So the skepticism aspect, I think, comes from a number of places. I vibe code as well, and I have tried the one line, build me an app that does this, right? And maybe my idea of what an app is and the things I want to build are, and maybe is probably even the wrong word. Most likely that one line description is too high a level for the complexity of what I want to build. When you see the videos of my 10-year-old built an app to help with maths homework, literally he's typing in build me an app to it's there's probably a million of them out there already.
Yeah.
There's a data set, it knows how to build it. Yes, so great. He doesn't have to go looking. He can tweak it, he can add AI in it and all that kind of thing, right? Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
If you want to build something that's a bit more industrial grade, I want to take data from these various points and amalgamate them and predict on these factors and give an output. Yeah, that is a bigger piece of work. And in order for that to happen, you need to understand those fundamentals. But from a skeptical point of view, well, you said I could just vibe code with one prompt. Well, no, exactly. And then understandably, people are nervous of the fact that it can hallucinate. So their view is, well, it can hallucinate, therefore I won't use it.
Mm.
None of these angles are wrong. I think this is,
They're all valid.
yeah, they are. And I think probably the biggest thing with AI is it's not, despite people thinking it's a technology thing, I personally think it's whether people kind of realize it or not, and this is a huge assumption, and prepare for some flame comments after this when you publish it. I think,
Mobs coming after you.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
it challenges what we think is being human, because we used to make food, but there was always other things that we did, and then we worked in factories, and there was always other things that we did. Like even if it's like I paint or I sang or I wrote music or whatever it might be, right? AI kind of does all of that now. So who are we? Like in this
Where's the
world going
purpose?
forward? Yeah,
Right.
it's like there was a post on LinkedIn this morning where this guy's like, well, what do we do? Just sit around on universal basic income for the rest of our lives, and
It's a valid
it's
concern,
a
isn't
good
it?
challenge, right?
Yeah, and we don't really know yet, do we? Because that's
No.
one of the ideas that's put forward, but that clearly doesn't suit everybody. It doesn't work for everybody. What happens to purpose and the
Exactly, that
drive to go
very
and
point. Yeah, yeah,
to build and create and to have relationships, all the rest of it.
yeah.
How's that going to play out? We don't really know definitively yet, do we?
No, no, and I won't name and shame them, but I know some people who like they will use ChatGPT to write a message back to their friend, and that's not me, by the way.
Oh gosh, that's awful.
But I'm like, you're doing what? It's like you've known this person 20 years. You don't need ChatGPT. Yeah, but what happens if it
Oh
comes
no,
across wrong? It's like it's
rumbled.
like that. I think we can easily become dependent on it because we lose a set of interpersonal skills, and I think that is
Yeah, yeah,
something to be very mindful of. Right, it has its place. Sometimes you just need to switch the thing off and go and live in the real world. Right.
absolutely. Yeah, no, there is that risk where I think I put a post out about this about 6 months back, saying the danger is that we outsource our thinking
Yeah.
almost to the machine, and it's so fantastic. You can have a conversation with it and ask it things. I've done silly things like take a picture of a shirt and say, "What's the best way to wash this shirt?" I don't want to screw it up. I don't want it to shrink or mix with the wrong colors. Or here's a picture of my air fryer. What's the right way to kind of fry this bread? You can tell I'm not a very culinary expert, but the
It's
point
all right. I
is
took a picture of my dryer and said, "How can I put this in without it shrinking?" So I've done
exactly.
similar.
Yeah, yeah, it's unbelievable. And pictures of the bookshelf, based on everything that's on here. What can you recommend? What's my
Yeah, yeah,
preferred author style, whatever. So the thing is, it can be applied everywhere, and it's almost addictive in a sense, isn't it? If you allow it, to take over advisory stuff, thinking stuff, expansion stuff.
mhm,
But it's
yeah,
it's a whole other rabbit hole. I think there is this narrative out there, just switching back to the kind of projects piece, where it's said that 95% of AI projects fail. There's this narrative that's out there. How do you personally handle that kind of argument when you're speaking with clients or again skeptical audiences?
yes. Define fail, I think, is the first question, and then define what it is you actually did, or be clear on what it is you actually did to launch in this pilot. So if it's go and play with this tech, and yeah, 85, 95, whatever the latest statistic is absolutely believable. If
Yeah.
you've got a defined business problem that you want to look at and you approach it, I think the challenge with AI is everyone thinks they can just do it tomorrow. I think that there is still an element of rigor. What is it we're trying to do? Do we have the building blocks in place? People, data, tech, whatever that might be, budget. You know,
Have you really thought
uh,
about it scientifically, in other words?
yeah,
Whereas you
and the great
ultimately, I want to build an app, and it's no wonder if that's one of the 95% they didn't get what they wanted. Well, it's no surprise, is it? So
yeah, Did you even know where you were going to start with? Right?
yeah,
What are we
yeah,
trying to prove here, and what? How do we prove it? Um, that will give you a better chance of success. Now, going back to something you mentioned earlier, it's a new technology. There is no guarantee it will work. I've said this through my whole career in data. When you're building a login flow for an application, there's a million login flows out there. We know how long it's going to take. Most of them are fairly prescriptive. Yes, there'll be some nuance, but we kind of know we can do it. When it comes to data and AI, most organizations don't know how good their data is. Now, I know some do, right? But let's generalize a little bit.
mhm,
If you don't know what's in your data, you don't know about its data quality, how much is it complete, all of this stuff, right? It's like building a house without knowing what foundation, what's under your foundations.
yeah,
You might be lucky, right? And you might just happen to build it on rock that you didn't know was there. But in most cases, no, you don't. The chances are you're going to get halfway through and things will start falling. Things will take longer. You've got to underpin this. You've got to do rework over there. And I think, just jumping into it is, if you want to do some side of desk, let's understand the technology a little bit. Great, right? That's absolutely go and do that. When you get to the point where you want to start building pilots, they need that rigor. And
yeah,
rigor includes also, if this proves itself, how do I get it to production?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
that's the bit most people don't think, right? Oh yeah, it
Mm.
works. I've got this ROI, invested 50K into a pilot. On paper it demonstrates 1 million a year. Whoopie do. Oh, hang on, what? We can't do that. oh, there's like some legislation or some governance or some process, or
Yeah,
this part of
some
the
obstacle.
organisation will go on strike, or what we need to let 100 people go, or we can't. It's all of this stuff. Like it's just not.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not often thought through. I'm
That's
sure
yeah.
organisations are there now, but for many, then
I think that's the point. There's a lack of realism. If we're being kind of stark about it, I suppose that's one of the issues, isn't it? It's kind of not being realistic about the scope or what they really want to achieve, and then investing the right rigor into the
yeah.
process to get that result.
The other thing, just to close on this one, is to look at pilot, right? Different teams, different people, different parts of the organisation. You're not learning so as well. Talk about compounding. You put £10 a week in a bank account, right, and it will scale. Yeah, you
Yeah,
put £10 in there and under the jar and under your pillow and in your wallet. It's
yeah.
like you
It
still got
stays
the
where it is.
money.
It's frozen.
Just yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great analogy actually. There was a phrase that you used somewhere in your literature that said shaping the operating model for AI-enabled enterprises, and I think
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
for me ahead of its time. Really, what does
yeah.
that look like in practice?
Yeah, so that goes back to I use the word reimagining a lot, and it's looking at things from first principles. It's not like, well, I've got this wacky idea, right?
Yeah,
We've got a
yeah,
business and it works. We've got customers, we've got a supply chain, we've got whatever that a community around us, whatever that might be. But there's this bit in the middle, right, that takes stuff on the inside and creates some inner value to the customer. What does that really look like? And a couple of examples I give. The first one is back in the day, right, and I love this because I'm feeling really old now. Digital camera. So we won't go back to film, but digital
oh,
camera.
digital
A
cameras.
cable. A laptop, some software.
Yeah,
You know, a CD burner, DVD burner. Right. We were on holiday. We take loads of pictures. Memory card goes in the laptop. Upload them. You get the picture, right? Some
I
software.
remember
You do
those days.
basic editing. Burn it to a DVD and send it out to the great auntie who lives in Australia or something.
Hmm. Hmm.
And everyone's getting a better laptop and a better camera and a bigger memory card, and then Instagram comes along. Well, what do you try to do? I'm trying to get pictures and I'm trying to distribute them, make them look good and distribute them very, very
Yeah,
simply.
simple. Yeah.
All of a sudden,
Hmm.
I don't need a camera because it's on my phone. I don't need a cable because it's in software. I don't need a laptop because it's my phone. I don't need a DVD burner because it's the internet, right? It's
Yeah,
like
it's incredible.
this
Yeah.
thing just I say just appeared, and very gifted guys to have the foresight, right? But that's an example. Like we have all these assumptions about we need all this complexity, and I think most of the time complexity is there because we've built an organization to serve that complexity, not to serve the outcome, the end result. And the other example I give is if you want to go away anywhere, you have to look at flights, and then you get a big long list of flights, and then you look at hotels and a big long list, and the dates don't line up. So you're going back in two, and then you're there, and it's like you want to go see this event because and it's like, well, can I get tickets? And then I want to book some restaurants, and it's like everything's siloed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and yes, I know travel agents exist, right? I know I can
Yeah.
walk into the high street, I can work with them online,
Yeah.
but we've optimized the siloed world. And
Hmm.
some of the work that was happening at Neon when I was there was how do you make that a cross-cutting
An
process?
integrated
Yeah,
experience.
I go on a
Yes.
and I go on an app, and I want to be in this place between these days, and it comes up with suggested flights and suggested hotels. A hotel,
Hmm.
yes, book. It's all
Yeah.
booked.
Yeah.
Changes in flights or whatever are all managed. I don't have to go back and do them all separately. I turn up, I walk straight through the airport into a ride share that's waiting for me. My luggage, straight to the hotel. The
Yeah.
luggage turns up later, and it's,
It's
I
incredible,
get
isn't it?
I get the organisation and structural and change around this is complex and may or may not ever happen. But that's just the thinking process. How do you say, well, actually, the customer wants to get from here to there? How do you support that journey in the optimum way?
Yeah, and in a sense, if you take Amazon's logistics business model as a good example of that, they've perfected it from one
Yeah,
state to
exactly.
the next state.
Yeah.
It's there through the letterbox. It's
Yeah,
incredible.
I'm out in the sticks and I can get stuff same day now. Sometimes, right? It's amazing.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. I mean, not every side effect's fantastic. You can make arguments about bad treatment or whatever exploitation.
Yeah,
But I think purely in isolation as a business model, operating model, you have to say it's very very impressive.
yeah, yeah.
Um, from my perspective. So, what are in your opinion, the biggest mindset shifts that executives need to make now to lead AI native organizations? That kind of shift in mindset.
Yeah. So the biggest one I think is to let go of preconceived ideas of how things need to be.
Yeah,
And that's a very easy thing to say and a very hard thing to do. Um, and I think the reason it can be really hard is it can involve a lot of letting go. If my organization is this big because it needs all these people and it looks good to the board or to the shareholders or to the market or whatever it might be, what happens if that's no longer true? And I don't want to labour the point of AI means everyone's redundant, because I don't believe that's true either. I believe that, as we talked about earlier, some jobs will naturally erode, but that is kind of the way life happens anyway, and it's happened
yeah,
before, and I'm sure it will happen again.
yeah,
But it's about finding, it's creating, things will emerge, however you want to describe it. There will be a new set of, jobs, of careers, of things that
yeah,
people just naturally want to do. And I know that doesn't help anybody who is, about to lose their job. And, recently, you know, a whole lot of people get let go from Amazon as well as Microsoft and, some other companies, right? So, this is not trying to belittle the experience in any shape or form, right? I've been through that in my career previously. Um, but it's where, what's next, and maybe careers are not for life anymore. Maybe they are for
no,
2 to 5 years. Maybe some will come and go in 3 months because there's a blip in the market and an opportunity.
yeah,
So execs, like, let go of preconceived assumptions, assumptions about how things need to be, preconceived ideas. Look at things from first principles. You might still get the same answer, and that's okay. It doesn't need to say blank sheet of paper, let's do something, force something different. It may just actually be, well, we just revalidated that we're in a really good place. Great, right?
yeah,
But there is a constant learning thing as well. Is like
absolutely.
this. You need to, everybody, right, whatever level they're at, whatever their career is, I think needs to start. There's a need to just learn quicker and
Yeah.
know how to learn quicker. And everyone's style's different, right? But
Mm.
that would, those are probably the three things for me.
It's adaptability, isn't it? Have you
Yeah, it
seen
is. Yeah,
any structural patterns in companies that have successfully integrated AI? Things that go beyond the technology itself.
yeah. A big thing from a deployment of the technology is having your workforce and customers involved. So every single project I work on, I don't do it from arm's length, and I don't even have it with a. I've seen some organisations have an AI steering committee, and they'll have the head of this department and the head of that department. That's good, but if you're not sat next to the person who's doing the job, you're likely to fail. So like literally, the very first project I did, we were trekking around the country and we were sat next to the people doing the work, and we were watching them and asking
Observing them
questions.
yeah. Mm.
And that was a highly regulated organisation, right? I won't allude to who they are, but they had a standard operating procedure. And the first thing we realised is that was not standard.
Really? So they were all
Every
just going
single
off and doing their own
team
things.
did it slightly differently
Uh,
because it
yeah.
worked for them. And then, okay, so this on paper ROI is I put AI in and it optimizes this standard operating procedure across the organization. No, because you've not got one, you've got about 15.
Yeah.
So how does that work? Right? Of course, what you do, right? You force everyone to do it the same way. You build 15 different systems. There's more myriad ways of fixing that, but
Yeah.
ivory tower thinking does not work in this world.
No, and it's probably the great leveler in that regard, isn't it? You have to kind of get the groundwork set first. The principles, the operating principles have to be correct and uniform, within the bounds of sensibility. But
Yeah.
as you
The,
say,
the
I think that's a good side effect.
Yeah, the other thing is a willingness to make mistakes and learn and iterate. There's If you've got the latest ERP upgrade, and ERP systems have been around for decades, right? you're fairly, it might take you a little while, longer than you imagine. Again, there's a similar stat on digital transformation programs, isn't there? That 80% fail or don't deliver the benefit that they're meant to. So, but it's fairly predictable, right? You can go to any consultancy in the world and they've probably done it, dozens, if not hundreds of times. Um, AI is not in that place, right? So you're going to learn, you're going to put the pilot out there. It is going to fail, but that's okay if you learn from it and take those learnings into the next one. If you just say, it's failed and throw your hands up, you become one of the 95%, right?
Exactly.
It's okay if it fails, right?
Yeah. It's a learning
Learn.
curve.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're absolutely right. You often talk about systems and simulations as well,
Yeah.
but also about conviction and creativity. So, where does the human side of leadership fit into all this, in your opinion?
Okay, so AI is definitely not replacing anytime soon that human connection. Um, and I've had some marathon chat GPT sessions, right? Where I've got really detailed on things I want to create an experience, but nothing is going to beat that talking to about that with people who are close to you, friends, family, spouse, kids, whatever it might be, right?
Yeah,
And just getting out and doing stuff. It's Halloween, isn't it? This weekend, last
it's
weekend, my
tomorrow, I
youngest.
think.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, losing track of days.
Hmm.
So last weekend we did one of these breakout rooms. Like
Yeah.
me, my wife, three kids went. Absolutely amazing. We didn't do it. We picked the hardest one and we failed. But,
Oh,
it
but
was
you tried.
okay because we had fun and we learned some stuff. Like, let's go back and try it again. So
It's taking part that counts.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw. Like, I don't have evidence. This is based on one article, so take it or leave it. Uh, there's a view that in-person events experiences are going to become, it's like the trend for 2026, 2027, and onwards.
No, really.
Yeah, we're kind of recognizing that the digital world is really important, but let's go and spend more time together. And I think that's that's
Yeah.
really important. I flew to Barcelona to meet my business coach a few weeks ago. It was kind of spur of the moment. Uh,
Yeah.
30, 40 people turned up. We hung out for a few hours. It was great. I see him every week for an hour and a half on Zoom, right? But it was so much better to see, and you pick up that energy of people
You
much
do.
better in
It's a different
person.
thing.
So there's the whole relationship and connectedness aspect. But personally, like I've done a lot of intuitive work and creativity work and personal development over the last 20 years, right? I don't see, like, I always feel like I'm 10 steps ahead of AI, no matter how well I prompt it. Like, I just, like, human creativity, if we become attuned to it, is probably the way I describe it, is far in excess of anything because AI is pattern matching of historical data, right? In a very clever way, I admit, but
Extremely clever. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, we're not getting an emergent imagination from it, which as humans, wherever that comes from, right? We have that, and that for me is so powerful because
Yeah.
that
And
for me
that's
is a frontier that we should really embrace.
and we should protect it as well because as
Yeah,
soon as we start losing that,
yeah,
it's like a muscle in the gym, isn't it? The brain starts
yeah.
wasting. You're not kind of using those critical thinking cells anymore. It's going to atrophy, isn't it? Very sadly.
Creativity doesn't mean I'm going to become the next Beethoven or
No.
anyone else, right? Skipping life again. Just like what should we do tonight? I know, let's do something randomly different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can prompt that
Spontaneity and all that good
and
stuff.
stuff,
Yeah.
but not
Yeah.
bad coming with yourself.
I think it all makes sense. And one of the other things that kind of relates to this that I've heard through the grapevine through various discussions is when these kind of huge disruptions happen and people trying to sort through the wreckage and trying to sort of find the next step in the path. Quite often there's a period where there's a little bit of a backlash or
Yeah,
oh, it's too much, and so I think you just made the same point. I think people are going to want to go back. It's like people having enough of streaming, wanting to go back to vinyl records,
yeah,
or saying, I
yeah.
want to go back to a simpler time. It's probably likely that will happen in the next few years. I think there'll be a point where we embrace that kind of analog world again, before we kind of really fully immerse ourselves in AI.
Yeah, yeah. Like yeah, I know we'll probably talk about it briefly in the past, but like I do a bit of karting, mountain biking, and honestly, like you can spend all the time you want in front of AI, but nothing beats you coming down the side of a hill or booting into a bend and wondering if you got to go round. Like,
Yeah,
that
you
raw
can't get
human
that sitting in front of a
experience.
computer,
Yeah,
can you?
it's like
No, it's very, very true. And I think you and I, just to tap into that sort of intuition side, we're both ENFPs, which
yeah,
essentially means quite creative thinkers, always in ideation mode, dreaming big, which is why I think we both love playing with LLMs, of different flavors. How does that temperament influence your leadership style, or how you can help clients navigate ambiguity? I imagine in a creative sense and new ideas it can. Are there any other aspects that you would bring to that equation?
yeah. So definitely, yeah. I think one of the things I've learned is sometimes I'll say stuff and I'll get crickets, right?
Yeah.
And I've kind of had to learn, for people out there who have similar, personalities to me and you, I've kind of had to learn to just be okay with that.
Hmm.
Because what I kind of realised then is at some point later, someone else will say it and everyone will be like, "Oh, that's a good idea."
Yeah.
And
Just coming up with it.
I
Yeah,
always used to have the temptation to say, "I said that an hour ago or a week
that's
ago."
right.
I'm just
Yeah.
like, you know what, the idea's out. Let's just go from there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll,
You're a little ahead of it.
wherever it's come from. And so that's the first thing. I think the self awareness is important, right?
Hmm.
Understanding your own motivation. Do you want to create this, or do you want to be the person who said it up front, right? And sometimes I think there's a bit of swallowing pride, right? So a bit of confessional there, maybe. But in terms of leadership style, what I've realised is to start to surround myself with people who are much better at the delivery aspect. A typical engagement for me is that ideation up front. It will be shaping, it'll be early, define a roadmap, business case, all of this kind of stuff. I love, right? Building a pilot, proof of concept, showing that it can be done. Maybe even the first release into production, but at some point I'll get to that place where it's kind of just turning the handle now. And at that point, for me, it becomes a natural place to move on.
Fizz has gone out of the bottle and you want to go
Yeah,
to the next
exactly.
project.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. That
there's.
ties in.
I have stayed around, and I'm sure I will at times for the full life cycle, right? And it's been a multi-year engagement or a multi-year project. Whether I'm in house or for a client, and I do love them because one of the challenges, if you're only ever at the front end, you don't see the real problems at the back end. Doing that every now and then, for me, is although it doesn't come naturally, I learn so much from doing it. Those challenges 6 months, 12 months, 2 years down the line
Hmm.
really inform other work I do, which is why I don't ever see myself as just this strategy and PowerPoint guy. I won't walk in and just bounce a load of ideas off, around a room and then walk out and do it, repeat, repeat, repeat. I code as well. I build these things, and actively been involved in delivery of a solution is massively important too. So
Hmm.
but I think really that my management style now is leadership style has come down to the self awareness of where I'm strong, where I naturally work. Like I'm not a good project manager because you give me a list of 100 tasks and it's kind of I don't think. Yeah, I don't want to shoot down my own career by saying any of this, but like, it's
Yeah.
not
We'll cut
natural
this
for
bit
me
out.
to go to a plan on a week by week basis and check progress and risk
Yeah.
against everyone. It's like I'm much better at
Not your
the
strength.
macro level, and I bring people in who are much better at that micro level. Now, I don't want to say micromanagement, but managing things on the ground in a much more detailed way. So
Fantastic, fantastic. You've launched. I'm pretty interested to learn more about this. You've launched Reimagined OS and
yeah,
Constellation Project AI, and
yeah,
the posts that I've seen in the last few days, it's fascinating. It's almost to me from the outside looking like this really creative experiment that
yeah,
you're kind
it
of running.
is. Yeah.
Can you give us a brief overview and then where you got the idea from and where you'd like it to get to?
Yeah, so let's start with Constellation. Like I've been into sci-fi my whole life. Year 11, like when I was 11, was quite a crux, right? Because not only did I try and build that natural language processing, tokenization engine, I also wrote some 44-page story in school, and the teacher made me read it in front of the class, which was, as a shy 11-year-old, was quite
Nerve
painful, I
wracking.
guess. But those two have been massive passions for me my whole life. And I used to play Elite, which is now Elite Frontier, I think. I don't quite get with the new version, but Elite is the original game. I loved it, weekends playing it. Nothing really ever captured that magic. I don't know if it's, whatever they say about everything looks great in hindsight.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like over the last few years, my mind has turned more and more to like the technology is starting to get there that we could build a galaxy, a space game, right, that is based on a living, breathing galaxy where the player is that's a backdrop to the player as opposed to just some scripted thing that plays out. And my youngest, he's big into games, and we bounced ideas. He's 14 now. We bounce ideas back into, and he feeds into it as much as I do.
Yeah.
So the original idea was, could we use AI to build this living and breathing galaxy where factions form, trade alliances form, all of this autonomously, and then the player just engages with it. And of course, the player would interact, and that would impact what happens as well. But it's like maybe it's a bit too much Ready Player One. I don't, who knows, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that was the idea. The space. I've dabbled a bit in Unreal development. So the space simulation bit, the flying a spaceship around is kind of solved, right? There's a lot of games that do that. But that whole backdrop of an AI-driven galaxy universe is, I've not seen anyone do it. I've seen a few people, come in 2025, then come in 2027, then come in 2030 kind of ideas.
Yeah.
Whether they'll come to fruition or not, I don't know. But that was really the starting point. And the ideas bounced through my mind a few times over recent years, and cut a bit of code, and it never really went anywhere. Client work took over, wherever it might be. But this last few months, like, it started to get, maybe the time has come, I think, for me to do it. But the bigger shift in it really is, which has taken it from this hobby project, I think is kind of where it was. Let's spend the next 5 years building this space trading game as a sole indie developer, and all the fun and games that's going to happen. I understand that route is not an easy one. When AI agent, agentic AI, is starting to get some momentum now, an incredibly immature technology. It's very hard to make it work in a meaningful way. And by meaningful, I mean, people are saying I've got an agentic framework, but effectively they've built a process and they've got some AI modules around it that do various things. And it's not straight pipeline, process development. There are nuances around it, but autonomous agents that go out there and do stuff because you asked it to, we're quite away from that. Go and research that holiday and come back with 3 proposals, and there's my credit card. Some of the browsers, like Perplexity browser and stuff, I think are probably starting to get there. But when I can go to GitHub and download a make me a millionaire in a week, agentic AI share trading algorithm or crypto, right? They're gonna come, right? Whether they work or not, they're gonna come.
Yeah.
And at that point, what happens to the market when you've got millions of these things running around at $10 a month, right? Or even, I just need a reasonable PC to run it. There's an article it's actually on the Bank of England website by a guy called Jonathan Hall, who's on their financial stability committee. I can't remember the exact name, and he talks about the threats of AI on financial stability. But one of the things, he talks about, private equity companies, hedge funds, running algorithmic trading at scale. I'm like, well, that's true. They've been doing it for a few decades, right? AI is going to make that more powerful. More, how do these play out? But he kept coming back to, but it's always the manager who's responsible for what AI does. And I'm like, that's cool in a hedge fund, right? Because it's regulated. But 100,000 people around the UK hitting the London Stock Exchange. What's the risk of multiple GameStop moments, right? Which was without AI, right? That was a Reddit thread, right? So where does this go at scale? And then you've got the rogue actor, and I won't mention countries, right? But one country wants to really destabilize another one. So you fire up a load of these bots and you go targeting their, infrastructure players, the banks, the utility companies, whatever it might be. So
Yeah.
what does that look like, right? So, I'm going to stay away at least at this point from the rogue actor. But just what does it look like if we have 100,000, 10,000, even 100 of these agents with a goal of making me rich, for example? let's just play that one
Sure.
out. How do they work on scale? Right? If I'm fighting you for an extra few quid on this share sale, how does that work? Do we end up with big spikes and troughs? Does it end up playing out as everything becomes a bit grey in the middle? What does that look like? And that's kind of one scenario that you can play through it, but I think it's a very tangible one. GameStop was only a few years back, I guess. But then how can what does it look like if you start playing about with the starting configuration, the run configuration? What levers can you pull?
Yeah.
It's still not going to stop people from going out there and taking rogue action. But at least if we understand a level playing field where most people are going to do it for the best of intent, what does that mean for stock exchanges, for energy trading markets, for just buying a flight to the Med over the summer, right? For concert tickets, do we going to have Oasis moments again and again and again, but on a grander scale, right? So
I mean, my view is it probably comes down to those guardrails. What kind of regulations in place to anticipate these kind of events, and how do you manage them? I mean, it's a really fascinating subject. I was going to close with one question. I often ask my guest about if you're to kind of pass some advice on or recommend a particular playbook. So in this case, what I'm going to ask you is if we were to reconvene in 3 years' time, I'm sure she'll be even younger and more handsome by then. What do you think we'll be saying about how AI has reshaped organizational life? And that's a very, open, abstract question. But any kind of brief predictions in 60 seconds?
the quick one is it'll probably play out nowhere near the way we imagine it now. I think it's probably the quick one, which is why I think stay agile, adaptable, learn how to learn quickly is probably the three things. Because there will be some macro trends we can probably predict, right? With some level of certainty anyway, or but yeah, those three.
It's going to be an interesting ride, isn't it? That's
is,
the least we can say.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Mark, having you on.
Yeah, thank you.
Fascinating conversation. Feel like I've learned a lot. I need to go and lie in a dark room, I think. If anyone would like to go ahead and connect with Mark on LinkedIn, I'll share in the description, obviously, your URL. Also, take a moment to visit timelapseai.com or reimaginedos.com. Those links will be in there as well to explore Mark's work. And in the meantime, thank you for coming on. All the very best luck with your ongoing projects. And yes, we'll catch up soon, Mark.
Yep. Thanks, Aaron. Cheers.
All the very best. Cheers.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.